You're trying to act from this place of I am enough, I am sufficient, I have something of value. If you can only support creators who provide value and make you think, please consider contributing to my Patreon page the next time you watch one of my videos. Hi everybody and welcome. Today I wanted to do a video on the authentic self. Now, authentic self is a concept that a lot of spiritual teachers and whatnot talk about, but it's not exactly a concept that's easy to understand mentally. It's something that you just kind of have to live by, and that's what makes it so challenging. Like when somebody says you have to be authentic, you're like, well, what exactly does that mean? And usually it just means you're not living from your heart. You're not living your natural inclinations. You don't trust yourself to know the truth, and so therefore you try to pretend like you have all the answers and so on. That's kind of the issue that most of us, I think, have with the authentic self. Is the authentic self is kind of like that all-knowing concept in the back of your head, the intuitive whispers, the right side of the brain also. It's the side that's about unity, it's about connection, and about understanding. I mean, really, that's what your authentic self is looking for, is understanding, both from other people and of other people. At least that's what it is in my opinion. Yours might be different. I don't know. It's your authentic self. So when we're going into how to be authentic, it's never quite an easy thing to figure out. It's never something that's easy to describe because it's different for all of us and yet the same in some ways. And it's not exactly a clear-cut path. I mean, you can't be entirely sure you're being authentic because honestly, you don't even know who you are. I mean, I don't know who I am 100% either. This is a constant journey. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing. So really, I'm not sure you can ever be fully authentic you, but at the same time, you can be as authentic as you possibly can be with the knowledge you have of you in the moment. And I guess authenticity is really, it's not about having all the answers, and I think that's where a lot of us get confused on this subject. Authenticity is merely about acting out of what you know. It's acting out of who you believe yourself to be in this moment, and it's acting instinctively rather than from logic or because you're trying to impress and because you're trying to win favors or whatever the case may be. You're trying to act from your inner knowing. You're trying to act from this place of I am enough, I am sufficient, I have something of value. And for me, that's always been kind of an easy thing to do. I have a natural sense of me. I have a natural sense of worth. I've always been confident to a certain extent. I've always lived my way. I've followed my own path. But I found it to be more and more difficult as I get older because you enter into, say, like romantic situations where a part of you is trying to prove to the other person that you are worthwhile and valuable. And at least for me, those are probably the most challenging because I feel scattered and frantic, and I'm not even sure who I am in that particular moment. I feel completely disconnected from me. From looking back, I can pretty commonly say, yes, I was being authentic. I was being authentically scattered, but I was being authentic. I was living from my true self. I was living from instinct. But to a certain degree, I almost couldn't help that in that moment also, because, I had no clue how to handle the situation, so I just kind of went to my default setting, which would be my authentic self, So, you might actually be shocked to discover that these kind of frantic, squirrely moments that you might enter into are some of the better examples of expression of authentic self, because, there's nothing holding you back at that point. You're completely without rules or guidebook, and you just kind of have to go with it. You have to just get through it, and that's when your authentic self presents its true nature. That's when you figure out who exactly you are in the eyes of other people, Well, I mean, just in your own eyes, really. You don't even need other people, but the other people do help you kind of feel that antsy feeling, which helps you become that authentic self. So when it comes to being authentic, I do think it's a good thing. But it's one of those concepts where it's like, I have no idea how to guide you on this one. I have no idea how to help you be authentic other than to tell you that it's there. If you're not, as long as you're not trying to put on airs, you're going to be it. It's a natural state. It's kind of like what Abraham Hicks says about happiness, where you are a cork in the water, and the only time that you aren't yourself, when you aren't happy and when you aren't authentic, is when you are intentionally holding the cork under, because the cork naturally floats on the surface. It naturally bobs in the water. It's naturally able to deal with all the waves of life. It's always naturally going to float. So the only time that you're not being authentic, and the only time that you're not happy or content or satisfied or whatever the case may be, is when you're preventing yourself from doing so. So authenticity is natural and normal. And once you let go of the reins, once you let go of the sense of control and the need to impress, the authentic self inevitably shows up. It cannot help it. That is you. It's you innate. That's the piece of you that's built in. That's the piece of you that is always going to exist. And you cannot help but be authentic in some circumstances. So when people say dare to be authentic, or dare to be yourself and all these other things, what they're really saying is let go of the reins. Let go of control and live life like it's brand new all the time. React in the moment without the bias of the past, and react naturally from your authentic center state. Act authentically from the heart. And this is where intuition and gut instinct become really important, because these inclinations, these driving forces, these kinds of feelings are kind of nudges of the authentic self. And a lot of spiritual teachers also go, well, they're the nudges of the higher self. And I would argue the higher self is the authentic self. The higher self is guiding you always. And if you think about it, I remember watching this on a Mind Valley video on YouTube, but they were discussing the sides of the brain. So the right side of the brain is like a router connected to the internet, where the left side of the brain is the computer, and together they're more powerful. But the authentic self is connected through the right brain. It's the authentic self is the internet connection. So you can live out of the computer, you can live out of the pre-programming, you can logic your way through life. But when you connect the computer to the router, and therefore to the internet, you really start to see the true potential. You really start to see the authenticity coming through, because at that point you're so fully connected you cannot help but be authentic. Your knowledge is so much more complete. And this is not exactly a concept that I think you're going to understand logically, but you can kind of feel it. When you are in a negative state of mind, you may notice that your focus is very, very narrow. Like anger, for example. You are almost entirely consumed by the situation when you're angry. I know that I am. When somebody hurts my feelings and I become angry as a result, I am almost entirely thinking about that over and over and over again, playing over how I should have reacted, how I could have reacted, trying to figure out why they said that, figuring out why it hurt, and, many other things. But when I'm in a positive focus, when I have a good feeling going on, which thankfully in my case is most of the time, my perspective broadens quite a bit. I could focus on learning new things. I could focus on this task or that task, or learning this or that. But I can also enter an even higher state where I feel like I understand the universe, and that's usually when I go into meditation, where you get the sense of your infinity, the everlasting nature of your soul or your spirit. This is one of the reasons why I find it weird that some people are atheists. I have no problem with the concept. It's just, I don't get it. I don't think I'll ever get it. because to me there's just too much mystery and there's too much wonder, and then that sense of infinity within me rejects the possibility that there is not at least something greater than us, whatever that greater thing may be. So I always go with agnosticism. There is something greater, but I don't want to define it. So when you tap into that inner infinity, when you tap into that sense of oneness, when you tap into interconnectedness, that's kind of like the broadest perspective you can have, because at that particular moment you're kind of including everything in your perspective, at least everything that you know of, and possibly even things that you don't necessarily know of but can conceive of. This is kind of like the world of imagination. You can think of it, but it may not necessarily exist. I have a story, for example, where one of my characters is a half dragon, half human, so she's kind of like a scaly human, similar to the dinosaur people from, like, Doctor Who, whatever those things are. But obviously those things, as far as we know, don't exist on this Earth. They may exist somewhere in the universe, but we can't say for sure. But we can conceive of them. You say dragon, you say human, and you can kind of synthesize an image in your brain. And that is something that is included in that one state. That's something that's included in that infinite state where your perspective is really broad. So I would argue that when you're in a positive state, you're actually acting more authentically than when you're in a negative state, because your perspective is so broad. You are so detached in some ways from the specifics of life that the only way you can act is by default. The only way you can act is by authenticity. And that's kind of cool. But, you also have to know that your natural state, whatever state that you've programmed yourself to be in all the time, is going to affect your capability to be authentic in the moment. So, focusing on the emotional well-being that you have is probably going to help you be authentic far more than any other tactic you have. I mean, figuring out who you are is going to be something that's natural, particularly when you're in a positive state of mind, because your curiosity is going to prompt you to look deeper, to see things, to learn, to grow. And one of the most important aspects of your life is you. Your desire to understand you is probably one of the greatest things in existence. I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of people kind of hide from the world, me too, honestly, through watching TV and movies and whatnot. We try to escape from the world so we don't have to face this intense desire within us to find truth and, feel at home and feel loved and feel wanted and feel worthy. I mean, this desire seems to eat away inside all of us, and when you're in a positive state, you kind of understand it a little bit better. I'm not saying I have all the answers on this one, because I certainly don't. But I do know that when I made the discovery a couple days ago that we are all inevitably going to end up where we are supposed to end up, and everything that we want inevitably comes to us due to the nature of the universe, that really helped me let go of or process through this feeling of unworth or worthlessness, or whatever the case may be, a little bit better. I feel like I understand how the world works, and at least in some parts, and that I don't need to worry about my specific role in society, because wherever I'm supposed to be, that's where I will go. It's inevitable. And that's kind of the statement I've been going with for a couple days now. Whenever I start to think of something, I'm like, oh, it's inevitable. That will inevitably happen. I don't need to worry about it. And that's been very effective. I've been very productive lately. So if you are wanting to be your authentic self, if you're wanting to act authentically, the best place to start is by working on your emotional state. And the easiest way to start working on your emotional state is through meditation. So if this is something that interests you, if this is something you want to do and try and be, then I recommend starting with meditation. And from there, you will naturally be guided to where you want to go. It's inevitable. So that's all I have to say today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like it. If you do, click the like button, subscribe button, and notification bell. And then if you have any questions, ideas, comments, subjects that you want me to discuss, or comments about what I should have mentioned in this video, feel free to leave those in the comment section and I will do my best to respond. But thanks for watching. I will talk to you again soon. Bye.